Such a special season to be together, and so it's cool to be on a Sunday morning journey with you as we all journey closer to Christmas. We're continuing a series today. We started it last week, and it's all about how we lean into this Advent season and prepare our hearts for Christmas. What we learned last week is the meaning of Advent. It's a word that gets tossed around this time of year. Not all of us know what it means, but it's a Latin word that simply means to come. And to prepare for Advent means to prepare for the coming of a significant person or a significant event. And so earlier in December, here's what we committed to do. We decided that we're going to strive for a daily anticipation of December 25th so that instead of just having one single event, what we could do is make this season more about a month-long journey. And there's some things that we've been trying to do as a church, is just sort of to set you up. For example, you remember us talking about Alexa last week. It's because as a church, we wanted to set you up for a 2-minute sort of Advent devotional. It's really cool, and it talks about some of the origins of our traditions from history, but it also partners it with Scripture. And you can ask Alexa to just share that with you from the privacy of your own home. You can go on our website at heritage.cc/Advent. And what that's going to do every single day is just take a few minutes of your day to continue to steer our hearts back to the reason for the season. It's an element of anticipation that we've been trying to maximize as we near Christmas, which is the point of Advent and why this series is called Great Expectations. Because if the spirit of Advent is all about expectation, then we wanted to get really good at asking this question this month. What did you expect? Because you can expect gifts, you can expect Santa, you can expect reindeer, you can expect stress, you can expect family. Sometimes those are both the same thing, but you can expect so many things this season, but what we want to do is make the season about things that actually satisfy the soul. And our Christmas traditions can end up being a giant holiday headache with tons of tasks and not enough time to do them. Or it can be about your soul being refreshed and you drawing closer to Jesus in your relationship with him in a new and a fresh way. Here's the thing that we have learned and continue to learn about Jesus, is that anytime we put Jesus at the center of something, he always makes it better. He always makes it worth it. So, today we're going to talk about another aspect of the Christmases that we've known. I want to give us some fair warning. What I'm about to talk about today is probably going to step on some toes. So if you're okay with that, just go ahead and say, "Bring it on." All right, I'm convinced. There's a little bit of attitude in some of those. I like it. I just want to ask that you remember that you said that. Okay. What I'm going to share today, I believe, is the number one thing attached to our Christmases that hijacks the focus of Christmas away from Christ. And that number one thing is, drumroll please, gifts. Yay. Or as Jim Carrey's Grinch says, gifts, 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 gifts. Like it's gifts. And some of you are wanting to shout amen right now. Others of you want to throw a pen at me. I just want to ask you to just kind of give me a little bit of rope. Give me some leash here. For most people, Christmas has become synonymous with gifts, right? And it would be really hard to argue anything different in our country. Americans last year spent on Christmas $729 billion. How many countries could we have purchased by now if we had decided? $729 billion spent on Christmas gifts last year alone. I want to say up front, as we talk about giving and we talk about gifts, I am not anti-gifts. I am anti-mandate gifts. Too soon? All right. No, seriously, I love gifts. I love gifts. I love receiving gifts. I love when I get to give gifts. As a family, we're giving gifts. As a church, we're giving away gifts. I'm not anti-gifts. But isn't it true that if we're not careful, gifts can hijack the bullseye of Christmas away from Christ? True or false? We got to be intentional about this thing. And this is one great thing about Advent. There are a lot of things, but here's one great thing about Advent. It is a chance for us to be reminded of something really important that can shift your whole season. And this is the important thing right here. It is not your birthday. That's an important message for us. And I know this is tough for some of us to swallow. I hear weeping even as I speak. I was about an hour and a half away a few months ago. I was with my mom, and I had my 4 kids with me. And on that visit, my mom wanted to give 2 of my kids birthday gifts because they're born in the same month, and we just kept missing each other, and she didn't have them. And so this was her chance to give them some birthday gifts that were kind of overdue. And so we're at her place, and she's giving them the gifts. And if you've ever given a gift to a kid in the presence of other kids, then you probably know what happened next. And this time, it happened to my 4-year-old, Soren, my little blondie boy who runs around here, and I'm like doing all the thanks, Mom, and kind of parents who run interference, and oh, cool, and oh, I know what that is, and I look at him, and he's doing this thing, very still, fighting with his own face, just trying, And I pull him close. I said, buddy, why are you sad? He said, I wanted it to be my birthday. And he starts to sob into my shoulder like he had just lost a pet. And so I'm holding him, and it's like, oh, buddy, and I'm trying to reason with him. And my mom loves to do this, but she kind of comes close to me and goes, she says, Justy. She calls me Justy. She says, Justy, this is exactly what you used to do when you were a kid. And I said, no, I didn't. And then I went back to my kid. But some of us need today to be reminded at Christmas, it's not your birthday. So let's just kind of warm up to this. Turn to some, make eye contact with somebody in the room. Say, it's not your birthday. You sound like you've had some practice. And maybe later in the service, we can have a moment of silence for the people who actually were born on December 25th. That is the worst. As many of you guys know, my wife, Courtney, her birthday is Christmas Eve. And she shares everything with Jesus, except she hates sharing that. It's just terrible. It's not good. Here's the big question we want to answer today. Where does Christmas gift giving come from? And if you brought a Bible with you, if you're willing to borrow one of ours, I want to show you. I want you to turn to Matthew chapter 1. This is the first book in the New Testament, and it's one of our 4 books that give us the life and times of Jesus. And I don't know if I said Matthew chapter 2, but it's Matthew chapter 2. If I said Matthew 1, I apologize. And for the next few moments, I'm going to show you historically and scripturally just where this comes from. Matthew chapter 2, verse 1, we'll have it on the screen as well. It says, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem. Now, Magi were considered the wisest and the most studied people in society. They were specifically trained in the area of astrology. This is where the term wise men actually comes from. And we really don't know how many magi came with them. We do know that they brought 3 gifts, and so maybe that's why we always kind of just do 3 wise men, or maybe that's all we can fit in our little nativity, but whatever it is. We don't know how many came, but a group of magi came. They sought after Jesus, and they arrived to Jesus after he was born. Now, these guys practiced astrology and magic. They were from a people that didn't know God, and they were the least likely people who would pursue God. But the cool thing is, God was pursuing them, right? And they show up in Jerusalem, and they start asking around. And they were talking about prophecies, and they're talking about stars, and word actually travels that some people came from very far away. They've got very impressive resumes. They're looking for this king. They're looking for the king of the Jews. And that perks up the ears of an individual who is the presently reigning king of the Jews. His name was Herod. If you skip down to verse 7, it says that Herod reached out to those magi, but before they could reach out to him. It's like the government's always listening, kind of thing. Herod called the Magi secretly. He found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. They gave him quick 101, astrology 101 on how they figured all of this out. He wants to be in the know. And then he sent them to Bethlehem, which is still today only a few miles outside of Jerusalem. Sent him to Bethlehem, and he said, "Go and search carefully for the child. Good luck. And as soon as you find him, report him to me, because I want to join your posse. I want to come and worship him too." Now, something that you really need to know about Herod at this point is that he had a really nasty habit. And I'm not talking about biting his nails. Herod had a habit of killing anybody who purportedly threatened his reign as king. History is very clear about this. This includes even his own sons. Caesar Augustus once said, "It is better to be one of Herod's pigs than to be one of his own sons." It's a pretty ruthless dude. And so, did he want to go worship the future king of the Jews? Absolutely not. He was sending the Magi ahead of him to sniff things out for him and find any threat of a new king so that he could eliminate him. And so these wise men, they move on ahead, now with the blessing of a king. They go to Bethlehem and they find this child that had been born. And verse 10 of our passage says that when they saw the star, they were overjoyed. Everything's checking out. And then verse 11 describes a scene that may not match a lot of your Christmas cards. It says, God's word says, "On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and they worshiped him." So here's why it sort of scrambles us sometimes, is because it says they arrived at a house, not a manger in a barn, right? And literally it says that they saw the child. They didn't see an infant or a newborn. And what this means is that they didn't meet Jesus on the night of his birth, like a lot of our pictures make it look. Jesus was most likely somewhere between 1 year and 2 years old when these wise men came to visit. And sadly, and like hands down, this is the saddest part of the Christmas story, is that sadly, this is what is going to put every other 1 to 2 year old boy in danger, life-threatening danger, because Herod these wise men are going to be told in a dream after this visit to go take another route home. And they're never going to see Herod again. And when Herod figures out that he had been outwitted, he's furious, and he immediately edicts that every little boy under 2 years old in and around the town of Bethlehem is executed. This is the historical account of Jesus' birth and the visit from the wise men. The part that stands out to us today, though, is this. When the wise men find Jesus, here's what they did. Let's look at it again. They bowed down, and they worshiped him. And if you don't find that a bit odd, maybe you've heard this story too many times. I have never met a toddler that I had the impulse to worship. And so you have to kind of try to be the mom. You're the mom, and you've just changed a diaper, and you've just put your firstborn down to sleep, and there's a knock at the door, and you go, and, peeking through the front glass, you're like, that's Elon Musk. And you open the door and you say hi, and he's surrounded by a few other people, sultans and sheiks and just world Nobel Peace Prize winners and like a who's who from mankind, and they're wealthy and they're learned, and he says, "I'm sorry, you don't know us. We've traveled many a weary mile. Is this the family that has the baby that was foretold through generations that would come?" And you say, "Well, yeah, you can come on in. And so these men, you welcome them into your living room, and they say, "Oh, we've got stories to tell you, but we were hoping we could meet him." And she's like, "Well, I just put him down for a nap." And they're like, "Oh, we don't want to disrupt." And you're like, "Oh, don't worry, no crying he makes." And then so she goes into the other room, and she brings in her little baby boy. And she puts him on their lap, and And most of us would go, oh, how sweet, and what's his middle name? And we ask all these, little coochie-coo, kind of questions. That's not what these guys do. They're looking at the baby and they're just like, what's going on here? Don't you think that maybe you and I could be refreshed on our modern understanding of worship by watching these guys? Think about it. They come from a long way. They have this pagan background. They practice magic and astrology. We don't really know what their spiritual beliefs are, what their morals or the ethics are. What we do know is this, that they're extremely learned men. And they've heavily invested their own funds into traveling a very long way just so that they could have the honor of stepping into the presence of this one person. And from that point, for them, it has nothing to do with them trying to get a spiritual fix in worship. It's not about them wanting to have no matter what they were feeling or what they felt, this is what they knew, that the stars, the prophecies had been very clear to all of mankind, that this was somebody whose greatness was way greater than their greatness. And for them, that was enough to just be in awe. Say, wow. It was their pleasure to come and worship. And here's the thing that always happens with worship is that when we are drawn to worship, then it always inspires us to bring something of worth. We kind of get this idea of what could I do for you? Like, how could I add to this? And so that's where we see in verse 11, it says, then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. These guys, they came not just to be and to acknowledge once in a lifetime opportunity for them, but they brought all these gifts that probably aren't on your wish list this year. Totally understand. Don't even know what they are, but it sounds cool, right? But in this day and age, these gifts were some of the priciest, like most extravagant kinds of gifts that a person could give. And listen, here's why we came to the passage. In this one verse, we get the idea of giving gifts at Christmas. And even think of it this way, that they presented them before Jesus, but you don't give a baby this stuff. They kind of gave it to his family. You can give to people in honor of Jesus, which is really, really awesome, because if you know the story, Mary and Joseph they were pretty poor, and they probably cashed in on some of these gifts right away for their next move, because if you know the story, an angel is going to appear to Jesus' family really soon, and he's going to tell them, you guys need to get out of Dodge because there's an oncoming massacre. And it's a Herod's edict. What we don't want to miss, though, is that these gifts were given in honor of Jesus and only Jesus. Parents, I want you to stick with me just for a minute, because I'm not going to say to go home, gather your kids together, and say that nobody's getting gifts, only Jesus is getting gifts this year. I hope that's good news for you. But the challenging part, I think, for a lot of us, it's very simple, is that if gifts are going to be the center of your Christmas, then Jesus never will be. It's that simple. The beauty of Advent is the intentional slowdown in order to really arrange our thoughts and daily refocus and prioritize the greatest thing that keeps Christmas incredible, and sort of push back on the things that would hollow it out. And the greatest thing about Christmas is always going to be Christ. It was his arrival. It's what Advent is all about. And so I want to wrap up our time together by giving you some tips along this beautiful journey that we're on called Advent, where it pertains to giving. And they're designed to help keep us from making it simply about more stuff. Again, I'm not anti-gifts. I am pro-gifts. I am pro-giving. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. It's tons of fun. Here's some tips along the way. All right? If you're writing things down, here's number 1. Gift-giving tips for Advent. Release the birthday hat. Okay, we've already covered this. It's time to give back the party hat. Christmas is not your second birthday. And I look in my own life, and you and I might not be the same, but in my own life, I think I was way more tempted to feel that way about Christmas when I was younger, when I kind of lacked perspective. It's not because I became more spiritual, but just because as we're younger, we just kind of tend to think that way, and that's what our excitement is about. But even as we get older, we still love to receive gifts. There's a lot of adults in this room that might be, no, I'm pretty hung up about what I'm getting this year. And I just spelled it out for my husband. I know what I'm getting, and or whatever it is. I think, I've kind of turned into my dad where, as kids, we want to get my dad stuff. My dad's like, you don't got to give me nothing. I don't know if you had a dad like that. And eventually I get, you want to get, and then you turn into, you want to get me something? Obey your mother. Okay, all right, it's fine, And I've kind of turned to that because, a lot of us just tend to buy the things we want rather than wait for Christmas. We don't need the anticipation and things like that. But even we know when we're sort of splurging on Christmas for ourselves, like, it's Christmas. It's, it's what I'm going to get. And none of that is bad. None of that is poison. Gifts are cool. But imagine, I just want you to imagine, if we would imagine for a moment what could change in our Christmas faith journey if we truly decided to make Jesus the center of attention at Christmas. Like my dad would always, as the years went on, my dad would compliment my mom for how, one of 6 kids in 6 years, there was always a birthday coming around the corner, and my mom perfected the art of what we called goodie bags, which is like little toys and candy and things like that. And those were always, everybody got one at somebody's birthday party. And the reason why is because of that meltdown that she knew was coming for everybody whose birthday it wasn't. And so they could look forward to that, and that way they could sort of suffer through, the celebration of this one person whose existence we actually had gathered to celebrate. And we could look forward to having a goodie bag. There's a way to give to everybody and still keep the main thing the main thing. Christmas is always going to be better off for your heart if you insist that it's more about what God gave all of us than about what we're going to get. Make sense? Tip number 1, release the party hat. Tip number 2, beware of the giver-taker within. I know we have a lot of The Office fans in here. Only a true fan of The Office would remember their very first season. If you're an Office watcher, it was the most awkward season that they made, which is what actually put them on the map. And so we got to partake in their very first Office Christmas party, and they're going to do a Secret Santa where they draw names and give gifts to each other. And there's a rule; it's a $20 limit. But then the boss Michael does a very Michael thing. He gives a $400 iPod, and so he can't wait to give this thing. And then he walks away from it with an oven mitt, and he's just livid. He just totally loses it. And people my age who appreciate The Office are like, I remember this episode. It's called Yankee Swap. I remember this. And some of my younger friends are like, what is an iPod? And why would it cost $400? What? I know I'm really meddling with this one, but this is what I would say. Beware of the giver-taker within. Pay attention when we sign up to be givers and then we walk away from that moment mad or sad. Happen to you? Because if you find yourself obsessing over how big their reaction should have been or the level of appreciation that they should have shown you, or you're mentally counting, okay, so I got them 5 things and they only got me 2 things. And if you find yourself kind of jumping through hoops like that mentally, here's the bad news. The bad news is you haven't totally crossed over into the giving spirit. You're still kind of in the gimme spirit because you are in this to get things, and you're saying, hey man, I expected a bigger reaction, or I wanted more appreciation, I wanted some praise, I didn't get what I did this, I didn't receive what I did this for. And I just want you to know that putting those kinds of expectations on your loved ones and the people you give gifts to, that will poison the experience for you. And it probably will poison the experience for both of you. They'll pick up on your disappointment. So have a goal to give for greater reasons than getting your own internal needs met. Beware of the giver-taker within. Tip number 3, give what you have to give. And here's what I mean by that. Give what you actually have to give. Now, we look at the story, and these wise men brought some pretty extravagant gifts, right? But also, these guys are loaded too. So they can do that. And what I want to say here, I know you're rich, but you're just going to let me say this anyway, okay? Is that sometimes we go overboard with giving. And in our present buying, that we do it in a way that we can't eventually keep up with. And I think a simple way to keep our gift giving from taking over our holidays, a simple way to do this, is to face the fact that giving often brings us joy in the moment. But sometimes when we overgive, joy in the moment turns into a lot of mess we have to clean up later on. Do you really think the people you love and the people who love you would be happy to hear that the cost of them getting a gift from you created a lot of anxiety later when it came to getting a credit card bill, or put you in hot water with your spouse, or, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And what overdoing it in our gift giving usually reveals is that we were giving from some other pressure. And maybe it was the pressure to keep up with the Joneses somehow, or it was a pressure to match, match what we think they might give us, or match the level of what we got the other kids, or what we got them last year, or what other people are giving them. We have ways of external pressure driving us to do more gift purchasing and giving that maybe just starts to go unchecked, and it adds to a lot of our holiday stress. So give what you actually have to give. I'm not recommending this as a every year plan, but I thought it was a cool idea. I don't know where she got it, but Courtney, my wife, a few years in a row, we just kind of limited it to something you want, something you need, something to wear, and something to read. Got that? Something, it's like, wait, what? Okay. Something you want, something you need, something to wear, something to read. And that was it. And there was more like uncles and aunts and other people and things like that. But for us, I don't know, I thought it was a cool way to be intentional about each of our kids, and also keep our financial head on straight, as well as keep our kids from being consumed with consumerism, and still have that opportunity to watch their eyes light up. At any rate, find a way to give what you actually have, and see how that leaves you more free to set your sights on higher things. Last tip, gift giving during Advent, last tip is give Jesus what he wants. Give Jesus what he wants. I know I sound like I'm talking crazy talk right now, but how cool would it be? How cool would it be if you and I could actually get Jesus something that he wants for his birthday? And as we put the wrap on this message, pun intended, let me steer us into a healthier direction of giving. It's a healthier direction of giving. It's kind of away from giving to get our internal needs met. It's kind of away from giving out of external pressure. And for many of us, it could be sort of a far-fetched idea and very, very new. But I'm telling you, it has a very bright future for your heart, for God's heart, a lot of other people's hearts. I want to end this and say, get Jesus what he wants for his birthday by telling you a story. And it's a story that's not true yet. But it will be true because Jesus tells us it'll be true. Ironically, this story is also recorded in the book of Matthew. And it's not at the beginning of baby Jesus' life. It's actually at the other end of the narrative. It's after he's grown up into a man, and then he has died on the cross for your and for my sins, and then he has triumphed over the grave. He's gone to heaven, where he reigns as the King of all kings and the Lord of all lords over all existence. And this story has him coming back to earth to take his rightful, worthy place as the judge of all mankind. Jesus tells this story himself. It's Matthew 25. It's about a day that's coming when all people will be very surprised to hear Jesus say who is invited to inherit God's kingdom and join him forever. These are the people that belong to God through Jesus. They belong to him like family. And there's this moment where the crowd is separate, and he looks to the people who are his own. And Jesus says that he will say, it says, then the king will say to those on his right, hey, come, you who are blessed. You're blessed by my Father. Inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the creation of the world. For I was hungry, you fed me. I was thirsty, you gave me a drink. I was a stranger, you invited me into your home. I was naked, you gave me clothing. I was sick, you cared for me. I was in prison, you visited me. Thank you, well done. And they're more like, we think we would remember when that happened. And that's when Jesus says, and I'll put it up on the screen, that's when Jesus says, the king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. You did for me. And I'm not going to pretend that there isn't so much that we could learn from this passage. Maybe we'll do a sermon on it in the future. So much we could learn about how things go for all of us in eternity, Jesus' rightful place. But for today, I just want you to notice this. Notice, if you will, that Jesus puts his name on the people around you. See that? Even the least likely people. And what he wants is to see us serving him by serving others and giving to him by giving to others. You want to get Jesus something for his birthday? You can do this. You can view every person around you as a target for the gifts that you buy, the cards that you write, and more, the stuff that money can't buy. The love, the attention, the affection, time, honor, a second chance, giving to people what you would want them to give to you if you were where they are. I want a tip, it's like the best tip I could think to give you from God's word on Jesus' birthday when it comes to giving around Advent. Think of Jesus as you give. See them as important as the one that you've come to worship today. Thank God that you get to give to others. And listen, your giving will always draw you closer to him as you love on other people. I want to close this up with just a moment of prayer. Feel free to bow your head, close your eyes. As we continue to mark this season of Advent, I just want to speak to the folks in the room who hear Jesus tell a story like that, how humbly he came and how powerfully he will reign. And you're thinking to yourself, wow, if that day is coming, I just want to be ready. I want to be close to God. I'm willing to do it through Jesus. I don't consider myself worthy, just like those wise men who probably beat me out IQ for IQ. I just want to recognize today that he is the one worth worshiping, and I want to belong to God now. Can I just lead your heart through a prayer? The prayer goes like this. It says, God, hey, I want to admit I am a sinner. I know. I believe that you are great, you're worthy of praise, you're holy, you're right in everything that you do, and I'm not. I don't stand a chance to make it into heaven on my own my life turns into a life that sees what you want and gives you what you want, and it ends up benefiting everybody around me. I'm believing today it's got to start in my heart. And I want to accept that you paid my penalty on the cross. I want you to forgive me of my sin. I don't want you to hold that against me. I want to receive the free gift of eternal life that you sent us through Jesus. I'm putting my trust in you today for a new heart and a new life, because you're worthy, and this is what I can bring you.